Hello. Um, Today I'm gonna show you roughly how to make a bezel set stone ring. This is the last one that I was working on. You can see it's not shaped and it's actually quite lopsided and there's a lot of flaws to it. Okay, so this ring is comprised of the stone that is set within the bezel, which is the frame, and the bezel is soldered to a back plate, which is what supports the stone and attaches to the ring, and then the ring itself, which can be made out of a number of different kinds of wires. I just use sheet metal for the sake of efficiency in practice and not having to purchase another kind of product that I will never actually wear myself, because I've yet to make one of these that I actually want to wear. So today I'm gonna start with selecting my stone. I have a bunch of fun boxes with a bunch of different stones. Just grab one at random. We'll do tiger's eye. Tiger's eye it kind of looks like wood. Polished, marbled wood. Oops, there's kind of picking up on some of the color. And got it. Okay, so I have my stone. Selected my stone. And now I'm going to take my sheet. This sheet is actually probably a little thicker than I need, but I'm still new to buying supplies as well as making the things. I've started cutting this one out. You can sort of see the light pass through there. Not straight, but I'm going to take my jewelry saw and a blade, super fine and thin, and I'm gonna put that in there, and then I'm going to cut out a square for my back plate. Here is my back plate for my stone to go on. The next thing I'm gonna do is take what's called bezel wire. This, it's very flat, very thin, rolled out copper wire that forms the wall around the stone, and I whacked myself with it. I already went and cut out a piece and wrapped it around my stone. The way that I do it is I set the stone down on the table just like that, and there's a couple different ways that you could do this. You could take your calipers, I don't have on hand, I think I dropped them, and measure the diameter of the stone and do some math, or you can do it the way that I was taught to do it, which is to simply wrap it around the stone like so. And then you'd mark it with a Sharpie and you'd cut it, and then you take this tool that I meant to look the name of up before starting. This is some kind of vise, really cute, small, can fit in your pocket. And this is for getting a straight, flat end of your wire, because when you cut it with shears or scissors for the bezel wire or wire cutters, the edge is not gonna be straight. It's gonna be slightly curled and it's gonna be at an angle. And this way you shave off that angle. So there is an angled size for getting an angled cut. If you want an angled cut on your wire to get a clean one, is this top bit comes apart. You can see the light pass through. or not, but you can see the gap. And then this is the side for the straight wire. So I would take my bezel that I've cut, and you can see there's different little grooves. These grooves are for round wire, these as well, and this is for flat wire. So this is for bezel wire, and I would feed the bezel wire through like that and line it up with that notch and pull it through, secure the vise. I wouldn't leave that much off of it, but you get the idea, and pull some through there. I would maybe leave that much if I'm trying to get a straight edge, and you can see that it's not totally straight on its own. And then I would take a file, probably my very favorite, handy dandy bastard file, which are these are the fucking best, sorry. And file that straight. And then once I have that, which again I've already done, that's a lie, I now need to do with this piece. I'm not gonna film this part because it'd be really hard to film. But now I would take my wire and make sure that the edges line up. And like that. That's a little, I'd want it better than this, but so that they're together. And then I would take my medium solder, or even my hard solder. Come on. Okay. And I would solder this into its own little ring. And then after doing that, I would take either my medium solder or my soft solder, and I would solder that to this. And to do that, I would take my handy dandy Liquid Flux and my torch, as well as I have a bigger, safer setup, but ultimately I would do it on top of this little charcoal block because it's the smoothest surface that I have to do it on. It's also a very customizable surface. You can carve out notches and things, and then, you know, make things to prop your work up however you may need. And I would solder those together, and I would get, after rounding this back out, after making this into a ring, I would put it back around my stone, make sure that it comes together, form it into a circle. Then I would put it onto my back plate, flux it, solder it. And then, because I do not have wire thick enough to make a ring with, I'm gonna take my copper plate again and cut out a band. And I'm not gonna make a very big band, because really I just need to be able to stabilize. The ring for this purpose is not to make something wearable, it's for practice. So it's just to stabilize the surface that I'm working on, which is within the bezel wire, setting the stone. So I'm gonna make a rectangle long enough to wrap into a ring shape. Now, sometimes this happens. I was sawing and my blade broke. Again, I'm new at this, so it happens a lot. I forgot to show you my rectangle, but you get the idea. I would then take after first filing this so that it's just the shape of the circle, or the shape that I want with the bezel on top, I'm gonna solder it onto my ring. And I'll end up with something like this. This one is, like I said, super flawed. The back plate is lined up and everything there, but on this side, the stone actually falls off the back plate. The bezel moved over as I was soldering it, and so it moved as it was being soldered in place. That doesn't make sense. But it happened so quickly that I couldn't use my pick to put it back in place, which is another tool. I'm sorry this is so disorganized. I have ADHD real bad, but I hope it's entertaining at least a a little bit. Okay, and then I would take my ring and I need something to stabilize it. Some people will take a tool like this, and you can put your ring in there, tighten it, and then you can stick it in your bench pin if you have the right kind. My bench pin is not carved wide enough to really do that, and it's gonna make burnishing and everything really hard if I'm gonna use a hammer, which I am. So for this, I'm gonna use my ball vise. This handy dandy thing, I can adjust to be whatever width to hold whatever I want, and it keeps it a lot more firmly in place on the table. Okay, now that I've got my ring and my ball vise, and I am using my original one again because I ran into a hiccup that I'm not even gonna get into because it's not worth it. After I'd done all of that soldering, I would take something called a pickle, and I would get off any fire scale before putting it in the ball face. And then from here, I can take what's called a burnisher. This is a very basic burnisher. That's for smoothing, and then this, I believe, is also called a burnisher. I'm blanking right now. I could be wrong. But you're gonna take this and a hammer, and this is how you're gonna set your stone. So if this weren't set, I would start by treating my circle like a square, and I would place it up against one side. We'll do this side to bend in the bezel. And then I would do the same on this side, and this side. Top, right, bottom, or top, right, bottom, left. And then I would simply keep working my way around, kind of similarly. I wouldn't just start going around like that, at least not at first. I would start kind of treating, because you're creating corners, so you want to start creating fewer and fewer corners. And then eventually you'll get to a point where first you want to push them in, and then you want to push it down. So you're going to do that, and then you go around and you do that all the way around, and then you can take this other burnisher, and you can start to smooth, which is something I am actually still working on in this ring. I'll show you in a minute. There's still a lot of gaps. See if I can get that corner down. Did a little bit. Pop that out of my vise. And here you have the ring that I showed you in the first place, but hopefully the camera will see. Yeah, you can see that black line just above the circle. That is a gap in the ring, or the bezel wire right there, where I didn't fully get it all the way down, but you can see next to it where there's copper line that I did. And that is roughly how you make a ring out of copper, wire, sheet, and stone. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.